Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvelously well. Today we are going to try out fluid audio speakers, the FX80s. I got to meet these fellows at NAMM this past NAMM, and we finally got the speakers sent over to try out, so I'm very excited to try them. And of course, we're doing a giveaway. So here they are. Oh, hey, I got the craft knife, I think this is. Is that what it's technically called? You know, I'm going to put it down like this. Try not to stab myself. So, I don't know the technical name of these, but they are what I would consider, having grown up in the UK, as being dual concentric speakers, meaning the tweeter is in the middle of the main driver. So hence the dual concentric. I think that's a copyrighted name of Tannoy, who invented it, the Scottish company Tannoy. Of course, the other name commonly used in America is coaxial speakers, and probably in other places as well. These are $498 a pair. They are, from what I remember, 60 watts for the main driver and 50 watts for the tweeter. So that would be 110 watt speakers. Obviously, so a pair of them giving you 120 watts total. They're powered. I read a bunch of reviews before just to kind of get a lay of the land. And they've got some really good positive reviews. So I'm excited to hear them. So they're kind of cool looking. They're ported at the front here. You can see the tweeter here. So here's some dip switches on the back, and we can set them for different environments. Obviously, I'm going to put it on a meter bridge, on a purpose-built meters bridge, and there's going to be a console underneath, so there'll be settings for that. I'm probably going to start off flat to see how they really sound and then adjust accordingly. You've got an overall volume control here. You've got an unbalanced input, if that's all you've got, unbalanced input. There's balanced, a TRS, that's a tip ring sleeve, for those of you who don't know what TRS means, and then an XLR. So these are actually mounting screws. You can see there's a thread there, which go fairly deep. So that means if you wanted to actually mount them, you know, on a bracket and have them coming out from the top of the wall, it's actually not a bad, or roof, or whatever you're doing, it's actually not a bad idea. Here's interesting with the frequency curve. This is something I noted. Here's the FX80 here, which is the one we've got. It's pretty strong, up to about 50 or 60 hertz. So you're going to hear the thump of a kick drum down there, and then it starts to roll off, you know, quite dramatically, which is typical, especially considering the size. But if the 50 or 60 hertz, it means I can trust it to get the low end of the kick drum. A lot of super, super lows when it comes to like 20, 30, but definitely 20 hertz. That's going to be right down there. I'm rolling most of that off anyway in most instruments, with the exception of maybe the kick drum, and I'm shaping it tight. So as long as I'm getting good 50 or 60 out of my monitors, I can work on them. So the speakers are up on the meter bridge. Now, the plinth that they are on is specially designed for an SSL. And maybe it's not too clear on it, but there is a rubber mat which sits on the top, which helps absorption and stuff. It's specifically designed. People ask me all the time. We've got them angled in. They're right next to the Genelecs. I haven't done any adjustments to the dip switches on the back. I want to hear how they sound in the room first before I decide what to do. And I'm going to go back between the Genelecs, which have been my primary speaker now for 20, I don't know, many years. Pretty much since they came out. So the Genelecs are the control, because we're going to come back to that and we're going to listen to it and know that, you know, that's how the music sounds in this room. All right, so let's start off with a track by Little Empire Lily's band called Too Bad. So I'm on the fluids. I'm starting with the fluids. What happened to our paradise? The low end is big, you know, like we talked about, 50 or 60s, there's like a little tiny bump in there, not huge, That's what the graph was showing, and that's what you're hearing. You're hearing like big low end on the kick. It's big. It's got a big, powerful low end. But before going to the Genelecs, I would say I'm not hearing top as much as I would anticipate. Like I'm not hearing like 10, 11, 12 as open as you get with the Genelecs. So let's just see if I'm right. I'm sure even through the mic you can hear that difference. The Genelecs have really good low end, but it's not floppy. It's not quite so stodgy. The fluids have a lot of low end, like a lot for a small speaker. It's what people like to say an extended low end. But again, we have done no adjustments, nothing to the fluid. The Genelecs have been adjusted for this room. First thing I'll say, which is really nice, is the volume difference isn't massively different. Even though they're not as powerful as the Genelecs, sometimes when I'm testing out smaller monitors in here, one of the things that drives me a little nutty is I have to like double the volume on here. You know, I don't want to have to keep cranking because that's a difficult thing to remember when you're flipping between monitors, that one might be like, you know, seemingly twice as loud as another. These feel like they're going to be loud enough in the room. Let's crank them. That's loud. I mean, for $500, these are going to fill your room unless you've got an absolutely massive room. I mean, our room's pretty big. Want a quick look around? It's full of lots of stuff, but yeah. I mean, you get a band in here. You know, we work in here all the times. So $500, enough power to fill a room. Okay, so let's go in and adjust them. Let's do some high boost on them. There's a high frequency dip switch where you can boost it and see if it gets us into that same high area as the Genelecs. Now, don't get me wrong. You know there's software out there that can flatten this out, but we're going to do what we can with the speakers here. We're going to go into this and see if we can get that extra high-end sizzle that I'm used to. So we flipped the dip switches on the back. It's the second dip switch. You flick it up and it gives you it says 1 dB of increased high-end on the tweeter. So, and the high-end's on 7K and above, which I think is what we're sort of missing. We're not missing, you know, the high mids as much as we're missing like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If it's going to do a gentle slope, that might solve the problem. So, I don't know. Let's have a listen.
I was crumbled, left me so sore to the touch. It hurts worse inside me. What happened to our paradise? Reinforced with promises, held strong by both of our dreams. Could we let our world come apart at the seams? We were a good one. Why did it have to fade? We were a good one. Why did it have to fade? It's too bad how things change quickly. Beauty can decay. It's too bad.
Okay, it's better. It's getting better. Now what I want to do is I do actually want to do a little bit of a low frequency dip. It's interesting though, because we might have to experiment with two different things. We might actually want to do a mid frequency boost, and then maybe the mids coming forward will, you know, because we're doing a high boost, mid boost, maybe that'll be better because it depends on where that low frequency dip is. Because if a low frequency dip is specifically there to basically get out of the way of a subwoofer, that might not be a good thing. So let's try two things. Let's do a mid boost first of all and see whether means I don't have to crank it as loud, therefore not having as much low end. But we'll experiment. So we looked at the back with the dip switches, and it's like a 60, 80, and 100 cutoff on the low end. So we're not going to do that yet. We just did the mid-range 1 dB boost. And I think, like I was saying, mid-range up, high end up, so it will create a difference in the relationship between the low end. Let's see if that brings it more forward for me. No low end yet. So far, so good. Sounds great. I like that mid-range boost. It's really interesting because it's much better to have that mid-range boost, particularly on the vocal. When we did the high boost, it actually added a little bit of a wispiness at about 7K and above. And then when we did the mid-range boost, it seemed to sort of bring it back into, where it wanted to be. Instead of like unbalanced like this, now the mid-range came up. So I like it. Still, the extended low end is just, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. Now, it could be something to do with the effect of having the console in there. So now we are gonna go up to 60 and roll that off and see how it feels with that. So I'm gonna give it a listen with the 60 hertz and below high passed. So far, no low end. It hurts what's inside me. What happened to our paradise? Reinforced with promises, held strong by both of our dreams. How could we let our world come apart at the seams? We were a good one. Why did I mean, that is so much better. There's probably something here with the porting and the console or something that's exaggerated that low end. So now it's perfect. It's a big deal. I mean, having control was really helpful. Of course, like SonarWorks as a software would probably solve any of these kind of issues immediately, or any of the other kinds of softwares. But it is interesting how, and it's a great lesson that it's not just the speakers, it's the speakers in the room. And our Genelecs have been tuned for this room and sound, I wouldn't say flat, they're a little hyped in the high mids and stuff, but we like it. We're used to working with it and we can mix well in here. But the Genelecs low end is like really tight and really perfect. So it wasn't until we did that 60 high passing, and now I'm digging it. I'm feeling the thump of the kick. Obviously you're not going to hear it on the little mic, but I'm feeling the thump while I've still got the mids click of it. I think if we were to run some SonarWorks, some software on it, and just tuck down a little bit of low mids, there's a little bit of a low mid build up in there, just a touch, it would be incredibly competitive with far more expensive speakers. So there you go. It's really an interesting thing. What I love about this is the volume, that there is some good volume coming out of a small bass speaker, especially if something that's $500 a pair. Like I said, when you've got multiple speakers like we do here, and we're trying to listen for something different, there's nothing more frustrating than having to try and remember. And I've seen people do it where they either have fancy monitor controllers that have, different levels set for each one, which is like the Audient Nero. That's great if you've got it. But on an SSL, we don't have that. So some people will mark off what the different speakers are, but you're going to forget. And you're going to be cranking it on some cheaper speakers and then go to your big speakers and blow your head off. So it's great that the volume difference is, the Genelecs are a bit louder, but they're not like twice as loud as I've had with other speakers. And they're rated at 110 watts a side with the 60 watts for the main driver and then 50 for the tweeter. I think, for us, a little bit of a low-mid cut. That low-mid build-up, I think, is there in all of the settings we've done. And I think it's just murking a little bit of the mid-range. Around the snare, you don't hear that ambience quite so much. And I think with a little bit of a low-mid cut, that would start to shine through a little bit more. Yep, great, loud-sounding speakers that you're going to have to tune for your room. But at $500, a great way to get in. I get asked all the time about speaker pricing. What's the best bang for the buck? And the reality is like, the bar is really, it might be really, really high, but it's a lot less expensive to get in there now than it used to be. So thanks ever so much, Fluid, for letting us try them out. You can enter down below to win a pair. You know what to do, or if you don't, click on the link, and all you have to do is give us like either an email address or a Facebook, something to let you know if you've won. But because it's a raffle, the more actions you do, the more chances you get to win. But it's not a prerequisite. You can just give us the information of where to send them. And also, because we have been for now about 3 years GDPR compliant, you don't have to be on the email list. You can choose to be on the email list or not to be on the email list. Okay, thanks ever so much. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, adio, goodbye.